Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Sports Talk with Broads. We are broadcasting live from the Manscaped Man Cave. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BROD at manscaped.com. Look, the Philadelphia 76ers have their new head coach. It's Doc Rivers, and I think based off the circumstances, based off of what was available on the market and who the Sixers were intrigued by in Ty Lue, D'Antoni, and Doc Rivers, I think they made the right choice. Without a doubt, you have an experienced guy in here. I just think that maybe some individuals need to pump the brakes a bit. I think the perfect comparison is Joe Girardi. The Philadelphia Phillies acquired Joe Girardi. He played in the league. He was a winner. He was a winner as a manager in New York with the Yankees. He is someone who we really enjoyed based off of his name, based off of his presence, based off the fact that he was a baseball lifer, if you will. He's an experienced manager. And then you saw what happened when you have a dumpster fire of a roster with the Phillies. It was terrible. Now, that's not to say that Joe Girardi was a bad manager. It just shows you that when you have someone at the top of the team, right? The coach is the top of the team, if you will. The manager is the top of a team in baseball. You can have someone at the top who is experienced, who has had success in this league, who was a champion. But if your roster is flawed, you are still in a problem. You are still in a debacle. And you look at the 76ers and you can easily say their roster still makes no sense whatsoever. Doc Rivers loves the pick and roll concept. A lot of NBA coaches love the pick and roll concept. Who's running that? Shake Milton? That doesn't work. That's not going to fly. Is it going to be Ben Simmons? I would love to think that Doc Rivers is going to put the ball in Ben Simmons' hands. It's very simple to me. He needs the ball in his hands. He does great things when the ball is in his hands. I want to see more of Ben Simmons being the primary ball handler. Elton Brand, Doc Rivers, smart basketball minds in my opinion. I don't trust this front office and the ownership group whatsoever. And we haven't heard any sort of information since the press conference by Elton Brand. Now, on paper, it doesn't say that Doc Rivers is going to be a part of much else other than coaching. I don't believe that that is necessarily true because Doc Rivers, who is a guy who's been around for a long time, he's coached a ton of seasons, he's been with multiple organizations. I don't think he takes a job if he's just kicking back and having no say in certain personnel moves. I'm not saying he's the GM. I'm not saying he has a bunch of power. I'm not saying he has the final say, but I would be very shocked and very surprised if he doesn't have his voice heard when it comes to making certain decisions with this organization. He deserves it. He has that type of respect, and that is what it might take to get a guy like Doc Rivers. Now, here's one thing that I think about when it comes to this type of move. Doc Rivers is a name that splashes, without a doubt. You can actually look at his production as a coach and say it's kind of underwhelming, right? But his name pops. His name is big. His name moves the needle. There's a lot of fans out there jumping up for joy, screaming, going crazy, acting as if, this is some huge acquisition. It's a nice acquisition. He's a good coach. But I think people are taking it to an extreme. And if those individuals dove back into what he has been in terms of, underachieving, 3-1 series leads, based off the way that they view a head coach compared to me, they probably would not like it as much if the name wasn't Doc Rivers. If I gave you Doc Rivers as his career as a whole as a coach, if I gave you his numbers and then I took away his name, you might love the regular season stats, but if I showed you the postseason stats, it's about 500 with a championship 12 years ago. I'm not trying to knock Doc Rivers. I like the hire. I think it's the best bet they could have had. He fell right on their laps. The Sixers front office members, they got lucky. The ownership crew, they got lucky that Doc Rivers was canned by the Clippers because I thought it was way too premature. They got lucky. I'm not ripping Doc Rivers, but I just find it funny that if you took away his name and you look at what he has done in the postseason, I would say a lot of the Brett Brown haters out there wouldn't like it. Oh, he blew 3-1 series lead. No way do I want a guy who blows 3-1 series leads. Yet if you say, hey, it's Doc Rivers, they're all about it. It's just very interesting to me, that's all. To clarify, I think this is the best way they could have went. There's no way to be disappointed in the hire. I just don't know if it's time to scream and shout and woohoo down Broad Street because of the coach, because I think that there are so many other issues with this team that there's a lot that you need to make up for. And I don't think a head coach makes up for that many issues. This roster doesn't make sense. Not at all. And I guess this is a perfect time to kind of throw this conversation in there, although I want to touch on what Doc Rivers can bring, what he can bring to the table. I want to touch on that as well more. There's a source of a source, if you will, that mentioned something about trading Ben Simmons. That Doc Rivers coming here, there's going to be a big trade, and I thought to myself, okay, all right. I'm not going to go too deep into that. It's not a source that I'm big on. I'm not saying he's not reliable whatsoever, but I'm not so all in on the track record as a whole. Then there was a report the same night, may I add, and let me look up the exact name of this individual who tweeted this out. This is not the same person that I'm talking about originally with the source of a source. Rashad Phillips. And he is part of the NCAA NBA Prospect Specialist SportsTalk2319.com. And he is claiming that Doc Rivers is going to try and trade Ben Simmons to Minnesota for the number 1 pick and take LaMelo Ball in Philadelphia. That would be the dumbest thing in the world. I am not trading Ben Simmons. Frustrating? Sure, I'm not trading Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, if you can't work with the best defender 1 through 5 in the NBA, then shame on you. And if you want to argue he's not number 1, okay, number 2. I mean, he's one of the best defenders 1 through 5 in the entire NBA. If you can't utilize that on an NBA team, well, then that's a problem. That's an issue. You should be able to work with Ben Simmons. Does he have flaws offensively? Without a doubt. Without a doubt, and I am bothered and I am annoyed with some of the things that I have seen over Ben Simmons over the last handful of years. It's okay to be frustrated with a player and say it's not time to give up on that said player either, and that's where I'm at with Ben Simmons. Trading picks and trading Ben Simmons for a pick, that's a joke. You're telling me Doc Rivers is just going to move on from Ben Simmons just like that? I find it so hard to believe. So take it for what it is. I'm not buying it completely, but now these are two sources in the same exact day that I've heard Ben Simmons possibly being on the move. Once again, take it for what it is, and these aren't the big-time, insane big Sixers beat reporters or someone who specifically covers the 76ers as a whole reporting this type of information. So once again, you can use your own judgment on it. I just think it's weird now that in the same exact day, I heard it twice from two different people. I would be pissed off. I would be very disgusted if they made that move, and I just don't know if they will, because when I look at Josh Harris and I look at David Blitzer, it's all about money. And this ties right into something that I wanted to touch on with Doc Rivers more, is the name, right? I talked about the name of Doc Rivers more so than the recent production, because he hasn't been out of the second round. This is a coach who has a great pedigree, who has a lot of wins, right? But he hasn't been out of the second round. You can't justify that, right? He has not been out of the second round. If you are someone who believes in the head coach making a major impact, well, you need to assess that. Me, I blame the players. I blame Paul George for being terrible. I blame Kawhi Leonard for having an awful, awful Game 7. That's where I put my blame more. So when I look at those things, when I look at the second round stuff and the 3-1 series leads, to me, it doesn't mean as much, so I can look at it and go, well, yeah, you know what? I think if the team was a different circumstance, you'd be in a different position. Now, the problem is, I don't think that this team is in the right circumstance for it to matter at the moment, and that's where I look at this and tie it perfectly to what Joe Girardi was to this Phillies team. He has value. He's a winner. He's got a good voice. He's respected throughout all of baseball, but the team stunk. They had huge flaws. And right now with this basketball team, Doc is respected. He's been a winner. His voice is just on another level of appreciated by NBA players and the NBA world. I love it. I love that aspect. Having a voice that carries so much. Brett Brown, it was time. It was time. I'm not a hater. I'm not a lover. I'm not a hater. But you know, you have that feel, you have that vibe where it's just time. It is time to move on. He was here for a long time. He's been through so much that it was one of the wonkiest stories ever in the history of basketball, from the process to the GM situation, Hinkie, Colangelo, having the Twitter accounts, making the Markelle Fultz trade, whatever the hell Markelle Fultz turned out to be. It was all over the place. One of the most nonsense, terrible sports stories ever, to be honest with you. But it was time. And I like Doc Rivers' voice. I think that there's value in it. But I also think it's fair to go, he has underachieved if you personally believe that head coaching has that much of an impact on an NBA roster. It would be a joke, in my opinion, if you're just ready to move on from Ben Simmons. Doc Rivers, I think he's smart enough to realize that he can work with this. To not even give it a shot would blow my mind. And that's why I lean towards not actually looking into these reports and believing that they are true. But I think it's worth just mentioning because it's weird that I heard it a couple times in the same exact day. I just don't believe it. I don't know if I can believe these sources as much as other sources throughout the NBA. So for that, I just want to throw it out and you can kind of assess it the way that you want to. The one thing, though, that somehow I keep getting right there and I forget to talk about it and I get sidetracked into another road here. The name, the splash of the name. Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. The ownership group loves that. It sells tickets. It sells. It makes them money. People come to the Wells Fargo Center to watch these two compete. Oh, Al Horford, bigger name. Tobias Harris, bigger name, right? The Jimmy Butler stuff, big name. They are obsessed with the big name stuff because it sells, because they are all about the marketing and making money more so than the actual product on the court. And with Doc Rivers, I'm not saying it was a bad hire. I actually support the hire, and I think that he fell right on their laps. This was solid for them. This was a good move for them. But the way that they approached it, I feel their mindset was more about the name than it is himself. I feel the ownership group looked at them and looked at him specifically and went, hold on, this will sell. My fans are now sucked in again. The fan base is all juiced up. I was driving home from the radio station today, and I was listening to people getting all fired up. Oh, we're going to the NBA Finals. Going to the NBA Finals? Really? You see Doc Rivers being hired here, and you just assume that he's going to go do something that he hasn't done since 2008. That's the same year the Phillies won the damn World Series. That's how long it's been. And he had a historic, dominant Boston Celtics team with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rondo. Yeah, that mattered. It mattered. It just seems like this happened, yet to get here, it just shows the disconnect as a whole. The ownership group loved D'Antoni. Elton Brand, maybe he went towards Ty Lue. Well, the ownership group didn't want Ty Lue. Well, Elton Brand didn't really feel great about D'Antoni. Like, what's going on here? What is happening? Well, a dysfunctional franchise is happening. And until that changes, you're a problem. And maybe the fact that Doc Rivers does have a lot of stock in this league and he does have a powerful vibe surrounding him, that he gets a lot to say, that he changes this. If there's some optimism when it comes to how horrendous Josh Harris is and David Blitzer, I feel Doc Rivers is a smart person, a very smart basketball mind. And I feel that if he sensed that this was a joke right now, that he wouldn't touch it. If he didn't have the ability to change what was going on, then he wouldn't touch it. He wouldn't want to be in a spot that he senses is horrible. Now, maybe Elton Brand sold him a different side of the story, and Doc Rivers doesn't really know what's happening. But Doc Rivers has been through so much. Remember what happened with that ownership? And the racist comments came out, and he was the head of that. He was the coach at the time, and he took that straight on, and he was the leader, and he was the voice of getting through that problem. It's not easy to do it all, and that's why I respect the hell out of him. That was such a brutal time. To be a minority, to be a person of color, and to go through your ownership being taped, saying racist things, and to have to face the media with that, and to have to support your team as well in a hard spot. He did an excellent job there, and that shows the leadership qualities of Doc Rivers. Not that I ever questioned the leadership qualities out of Doc Rivers. I think that is something that he does exceptionally well. But looking at this current spot for the Sixers, I heard a lot of fans going down the road of, why don't you find that Nick Nurse? Why don't you find that guy who's sitting on the bench who maybe isn't a head coach? You know why I didn't think that was a great idea? I'm not saying there's not guys out there, because of course there are guys out there or females out there who can do the job, who are just not found yet, because all of these coaches at one point were not found yet. This is a different spot. This is a different market. This is not normal. The process, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, having these two on the roster, this move, this will define such a key part of who this franchise was during this time. This is a monstrous hire. This is a big-time hire, because this will describe and identify what this era of Sixers basketball was all about. And to acquire someone like Doc Rivers, I think it's probably the best bet you could have had. Now, once again, I think the Sixers got lucky, but sometimes you need luck in sports. He kind of fell right on their lap. It's not ironic that Doc Rivers was hired. Like, D'Antoni was the favorite, right? They love him so much. Ty Lue was in the mix as well. As soon as Doc Rivers gets fired, he's watching Game 1 with Elton Brand, and the Sixers weren't allowing him to leave until he got offered. And oh, by the way, he got offered apparently 5 years, and here he is. It's not ironic that it happened this quickly. He fell. He fell right on their laps, and they probably didn't expect him to be fired, but once he did, you have to go out and get a man like that. This was the type of person you needed in this spot. And it's funny, a lot of the people who wanted Brett Brown fired last year, the year before that, and even the year before that, maybe holding on for him for that extra year, which I thought was the right move, because I can't justify firing Brett Brown after a Game 7 quadruple doink where they were a quadruple doink away from getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. I personally couldn't justify that. I supported the organization for making that move. You could argue that if Doc Rivers works out, that it could have been a blessing in disguise, because if you hired a head coach for this past season, you wouldn't have just fired him when Doc Rivers became available. So with that being said, maybe it was a positive thing. You need to be lucky in sports sometimes, and maybe that's just what happened with the 76ers. Now, speaking of luck, some would claim that luck is involved with betting. But I'll tell you, it's not. If you utilize BetQL and what they bring to the table, their analytics, data, information, trends, sharp money, all the information you need when placing bets, BetQL has it. And if I told you I can get you 20% off your first payment, you should say, Broads, what's the promo code? And I will say Broads20. So utilize the promo code Broads20 at BetQL.com for 20% of your first payment, and you will get all of the data that you need to help you make a very educated bet on all of your bets. I've been cashing out every night, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's probably the best thing that I have ever done since sports has returned. I'm not even lying. We're also implementing an NFL Weekly Pick'em pool presented by BetQL. We are giving away weekly prizes. On top of that, a grand prize, courtesy of Rosnov Jewelers, a championship bracelet. All the information is down below. I've opened up the 24/7 anytime hotline. It's actually always available for you to call, but the phone line was flooded as soon as Doc Rivers was announced by the Sixers. Well, it's not official yet, but yes, he is the coach, and everyone was flying in, putting in their phone calls, and I will be reacting to your phone calls in a podcast in the next day or so. So make sure you call the number 856-442-9805, leave a message, and I will be having a reactionary podcast when it comes to Doc Rivers being the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. I will react to your reaction, and I love doing that because I feel a connection. I get to connect with the listeners, and there's nothing better than that. It does feel weird saying it, though. Doc Rivers, your head coach of the 76ers, and I know on social media there's some fun going on with Mark Zumoff because Mark Zumoff is very open about not calling him Doc, calling him Glenn, because there's only one Doc in this city, and I wonder if he's going to go on the broadcast with Doc or Glenn. I feel for a full 82, it's hard not to go Doc. If he's on the road coming into Philadelphia as a coach of an opposing team, it's easy to go Glenn. But do you go Doc for a full 82 and some playoff games? I think you got to go Doc. That's just me, but maybe that's the new thing. Maybe that's the way they go. I can't believe, though, after seeing some of the reports that he was watching the game with Elton Brand, game 1 of the NBA Finals. What do you think they were eating? A fruit salad? Maybe? Wings? Pizza? What road do you think they went down? You think they ordered Domino's, cheesy bread? Maybe they were ripping around a bowl, and they were passing the bowl around. They ordered Domino's. I don't know. Who knows? Josh Harris is in the background. You think Josh Harris was watching with, if he wasn't invited, watching with binoculars? Guy's a creep. Can't even stand him. All right, look. Here's reality. Doc Rivers is a man who I think is, for what this team needs, I think it is exactly what you were kind of looking for. The X's and O's stuff, like it is what it is, right? If you want to look around the NBA, you can classify him as a good coach in this league. Is he an elite coach? I don't know if he's an elite coach. He's a good coach. He's been around a long time where he has racked up a lot of regular season wins. He's been to the finals twice, and he has won one NBA championship. I think he's a good coach. I don't think he's an elite coach. There's only a handful, maybe 3 elite coaches that make that much of a difference. He's a good coach. He has been very criticized very recently for fourth quarter situations, for certain things on the floor, not making adjustments, the same stuff that people were ready to freak out about Brett Brown for. Not ready to freak out about. They did it for multiple years. And I also saw some reports out there. Keith Smith, Yahoo Sports NBA. One of the things I thought it was great, he talked about Doc Rivers being a good hire for the Sixers, but he's going to fall in love with someone who shouldn't play that much, and he's going to fall in love with them and maybe play him more than he deserves. Hold on a second. I feel like that was Raul Neto this year. I feel like that was maybe Furkan Korkmaz at some points. It's almost as if that's every NBA coach. It's almost as if that's just what NBA coaches do. I hate to break it to you, right? For all the Brett Brown haters. I'm not even a Brett Brown lover. It was time. It was ready for him to move on, but he was the scapegoat. There are so many issues. The things you freaked out about when it came to Brett Brown, I promise you there's going to be times where you're doing the same exact thing with Doc Rivers. And that's not a knock on Doc Rivers. That's just the nature of the NBA coach. And the nature of the NBA is you got to have a better roster than what you have. Now, Tobias Harris played his best basketball with Doc Rivers. And maybe that had something to do with the pick and roll game that Doc Rivers likes to implement throughout his system. We'll see. I'm sure Tobias Harris is thrilled. And that would make me feel like, hey, maybe Al Horford should be the one to go. Like I said, with all this nonsense with Ben Simmons right now, it would blow my mind if they went down that road because, once again, I feel when it comes to the ownership group, they're not going to get rid of Ben Simmons. I would be shocked. I would be stunned if they were ready to move on from Ben. because he produces money. Not that LaMelo Ball wouldn't. Apparently, that's the report. The first-round pick. Could you imagine trading Ben Simmons for LaMelo Ball one-on-one? I just don't know how you can possibly do that. I'm sorry. I cannot give up on Ben Simmons yet. I will ride and die with Ben Simmons. He irritates me. He frustrates me. But you're telling me Doc Rivers doesn't even want the attempt? He doesn't even want the chance to tap in to Ben Simmons? Now, don't give me that he's going to make him shoot. Stop with the make him shoot stuff. Maybe he persuades him differently than Brett Brown. Maybe because Doc Rivers has been around for so long that his voice carries differently to Ben Simmons, but it's not going to be to the point of he forces Ben Simmons to shoot. Maybe he gives him input. Maybe he gives him some confidence stuff, and he works in certain things to maybe get him in spots that he feels most comfortable. He's not going to force him, sit him, demand him to do that stuff. It's just not how it works. Doc is a player's coach, yet he can be hard on them, which I think is a good mix. You need to have a good mix, especially with this crew, because what they have been through, it's time to maybe get a little bit of a different vibe. You know, it's pretty common to go from one coach to the next coach, and when you do flip-flop, it's normally different. You normally don't go from, the same style of coach to the same style of coach. You don't have one coach and go to a coach that's exactly the same as him, because then you're really not getting much out of the change. I do know, though, from personal experience, that a coaching change does have a big spark plug factor. They haven't played for Doc Rivers. They know who Doc Rivers is, obviously, and they know what he's all about. When he walks into the room and when he walks out for practice for the first day, there's going to be a different sense of urgency. When it's game one of the next season, there's going to be a whole new mentality out of these players because they need to earn their respected spots for Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers can walk in there and be like, all right, fellas, let's go. You want your spot? Show me that you are going to earn your spot. Show me what spot you want. This is on you. So from that aspect, these players will go out there and there's going to be a different level of sense of urgency because there's a whole new coach in there with a whole new mindset and a whole new philosophy. And that's what a new change, a new coaching change will do for a franchise and for players. I witnessed it myself. I experienced it myself. And I'll never forget, we had a coaching change when I was playing junior hockey in the Eastern Hockey League. Literally, mid-season, boom, coach got fired. I couldn't believe it. We were all shocked. And then here's a new coach the next day. Practice the next day. I'll tell you what, it was intense. It was a battle. And it wasn't as if that was the coach's identity, but it's almost like, yo, fellas, you want your spot? Go earn your spot. Go show the new coach what you're all about. And I think that is where it's going to be big, especially early. There's always going to be a time where coaches lose a message after so many years because it's hard to keep a message for that long. Brett, I think by the end there, okay, it was pretty clear. It wasn't reaching the guys as much as it should have. Was it shocking that the Clippers made this move? I think so. I think it was too early. I thought it was premature after acquiring Kawhi Leonard and getting Paul George to go out and make that type of move. But if they felt it was necessary for their club, then they felt it was necessary. Maybe Doc Rivers, the Sixers need stability. And Doc Rivers can provide that. Is Doc Rivers the guy who is going to bring them to the NBA championship and bring this city a championship? I don't know. He has one title, and it was 12 years ago. He hasn't been able to get to the conference finals in so damn long. To me, that's more a conversation about what his teams were and how those individuals played. But still, it's not like he's been to the Eastern Conference Final or the Western Conference Finals, excuse me. Well, he's been all around, He hasn't been there in a while. Maybe Doc Rivers is the guy that gets you to where you need the next guy. But right now, the Sixers are such a joke internally that the stability of Doc Rivers is very valuable and very important. So he might not be the guy that brings a Larry O'Brien here, but he might be the guy that sets you up for the right spot. And I'll take that because right now, I don't think you realize how bad it is internally. It's a serious joke. They are a mess. They still haven't made any front office moves. And I actually heard Keith Pompey talking about this. maybe they don't necessarily fire people in the front office, but they give them a new role. They take away some of their work. The problem is, they can say that in theory, yet I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't know if I can believe them. So there you have it, Doc Rivers. I think it was the right move based off the circumstances, and this team needs stability, so I'm here for it. Do not forget, call in 856-442-9805. I will be uploading a reactionary podcast to your phone calls on Doc Rivers within the next day or so. Can't wait. Love it. And this episode, real quick before we end this, is sponsored by Orbit Energy and Power. And with over 20 years of experience, they are home to your solar experts in residential and commercial projects. They provide water purification systems, backup energy services, battery storage, tree removals, electrical upgrades, and more. Their information is down below. Thank you all so much, and I will see you next time.